Hello, Tai Chi and Qigong people. Dr. Andrew Von Plitt here again with another live stream. Just going to be responding to some comments and questions real quick, and then I'm going to wrap it up because it is pretty late and it's been a long day. So let's jump right in. The first question I'm going to get to is from a user called Alan Haney, I believe is how the last name is pronounced. I apologize if I got that wrong. Alan is a subscriber to the channel. Thank you so much for being a subscriber, Alan. And Alan says, thank you for the quality of your lessons and answers to questions. My question is, what, if any, is the intersection or overlap between Tai Chi and Qigong, including standing and mindfulness meditation? Thanks. So the concept of mindfulness and mindful meditation, or mindfulness meditation, the idea is, at least the commonly accepted definition of this, I'm sure there are many other definitions and many other perspectives on this, but the common idea is basically the mindfulness is being aware, acutely aware of your body, your sensations, your environment, your breathing, everything that's going on, and being kind of an observer of these things without placing any meaning or judgment or anything like that. You are just simply being aware. And this can be added to specific meditation practices. It even can be added to things like eating. So you can do mindful eating, where you take the time to, like, you take a small bite of food and you go through an entire process of being acutely aware of everything from the texture to the minute flavors, how the flavor changes over the time of chewing the food, what the response in your body is to the flavor, all these different things. You just become very aware of it all, and you don't pass judgment. You don't add meaning to it. It's not on, it tastes this way to me because when I was a child, such and such happened. It is just, you're aware of it, and you're basically an observer of the things that you're aware of. So that's kind of the common definition of mindfulness, and how it can be applied to meditation practices is just bringing that awareness to a meditation practice. And so where that overlaps with Tai Chi and Qigong is that, especially with standing Qigong, a big part of what you're doing is becoming aware of every aspect of your body and its alignment, in its structure, in your root, all of these different things you should be very aware of. Now, you shouldn't be so aware of them that it's pulling you into an observational state where you're just observing these things, because you should have intent and feeling behind these things. That's allowing your body to regulate itself into this practice. So the overlap is that in Tai Chi and Qigong, you do need to be aware of your structure, your frame, your internal environment, and especially your center. And when you get into moving practices and push hands, things like that, if you're not aware of your center, you can't control it. And if you can't control your center, your training partner will. So you do need that awareness, but at the same time, that's not the entire focus of the training. It's just one aspect of it. So you could bring, and you should bring, an aspect of mindfulness into your Tai Chi and Qigong training, but it should not be the only aspect of what you're doing. So I hope that answers your question and kind of explains a little bit about some of the overlap between those things. If not, or if you have more questions about that, Alan, please feel free to drop them in the comments below. I hope that was helpful for you. And thank you for being a subscriber. And thank you to all the subscribers out there. I'm going to roll on to the next comment here. Let's see. This one is, the previous comment from Alan was on, I think it was my last Q&A session. It might have been the one before that. I need to start numbering them because I can't tell how old these things are anymore. Let's see. So the next one is from a Taiji 10 form video, and the user's name is Jose E. Salazar. And let's see. Nice video to learn, Mr. Plitt. I'm 77 years old and trying to learn Tai Chi. Well, Jose, congratulations on starting your journey of learning Tai Chi. That's really exciting. Any age is a great age to start learning Tai Chi, so 77 sounds like a perfect time to me. And I'm glad to hear that you're enjoying the videos. So keep up the good work, and thanks for the comment. Let's see. The next comment is from Qigong Basic Series video or part 6 um, for Spine and Ming Men. The commenter's name is Jonathan Nadeau. This was left 2 days ago. The question is, do you keep the posture of the lower back while sitting? I'm asking because in my Zen training years, my teacher asked us to curve the low back, stick out the butt, okay, to sit on the front edge of our cushions, and it really didn't feel natural to me. And I'd rather tend to adopt what you described instead. Okay, so this is coming from, like I said, one of the basic Qigong videos, and it's basically talking about the alignment of the low back. And when you're doing standing post Qigong, it is important, as with all aspects of Qigong and all aspects of Tai Chi, that you have good structure that is really conducive to what you're doing and is not making it harder for you to do what you're doing, and is not giving an advantage to either gravity or a training partner to control your frame. So, one really good way of doing that is when you align your hip and your low back. A lot of times, as I said in this video, that the comment is on. A lot of times we say you want to like kind of tuck the hips or straighten out the curvature of the low back, and that's taken too far a lot of times to think that you need to push the pelvis really far forward and try to actually flatten the curve of the low back. And that's not really the goal that you're after. The idea is to remove the extremes of positioning. So, a lot of times, most people tend toward an excessive, what's called lordotic curve, if I can actually say it, in the lumbar spine. And so that's basically where the butt sticks out more and the belly sticks out more forward. So the low back is curved in the direction of the belly, and that curve is typically accentuated in a lot of people. Not most people. It's just kind of when the low back gets tight, a lot of times it accentuates that curve. And more people, I would say, especially people who do a lot of physical activity, especially heavy lifting, they will tend to have more, if they don't work on mobilizing the low back and keeping it from going to that extreme, will have more of a lordotic curve in their low back than is probably ideal, just from the tension of the low back. And so, this idea of straightening out the curvature of the low back really should be removing the excess lordotic curve, but not trying to flatten the low back or the lumbar spine, because it really should have a curve to it. That's an important part of the shock absorbing ability of the spine. And so you don't want to get rid of the curves in your spine. They're there for a reason. They're important. So with that, that's kind of what was being talked about in that video. That's kind of what you're getting at when you're doing the standing post. You just want to take out the excess of either tipping the hips too far forward or tipping them too far back. You want them in the middle so that they kind of maximally support the spinal column. And so the question is asking, do you keep that same kind of alignment when in the hips rather, when you're doing a seating, my words are not working today. I really should do this earlier. I apologize. I'm going to try this again. When you're doing a sitting Qigong practice, do you also keep that same alignment in the hips? And the answer is yes. You do want to have the hips situated so that they offer maximal support to the spinal column. If they're rocked too far back, you're going to be uh, excessively flattening the curve of the lumbar spine, and that's really not going to feel good on your low back. It's going to push your hips so that the tailbone is getting closer to the floor, and if you really overdo it, you can actually put pressure on the tailbone on the floor, and that's not comfortable. Or if you're on a firmer cushion, you can also put pressure on the tailbone that way. So, yeah, you don't want to go too far back, and of course, going too far forward, you're kind of running into the same problem with rocking too far forward. You're accentuating that lumbar curve, you're tightening up the low back a little too much, and it's just going to be uncomfortable and not a great support. So, yes, when you're doing sitting Qigong, you really should be using the same body structure principles as you do when you're doing standing post Qigong. It's just that instead of your base being your feet on the ground, your base is your sit bones or your ischial tuberosities. So, that's my answer there. I hope that's helpful for you. I do know that a lot of different instructors have different ideas of the best way to sit, and I always encourage people to listen to the instructor they are training under. because they are teaching the way that they teach it for a specific reason. And it might be good to engage with them in questions about why they're giving the instructions that they're giving, and see if the answers make sense to you and if you feel comfortable with the whole situation. So it's always best to ask your instructor, if you're working with an instructor, why they're wanting you to do specific things, specific body patterns, specific structures in the body, and take it from there. So I hope that answers your question. I hope that was useful for you. Thank you so much for the question, Jonathan. And I'm going to roll on to the next question here. Next thing is actually another comment. This one's another one from Jonathan Nadeau. This one is on a previous quick Q&A session where I talked a bit about Pangen Qigong. And Jonathan says, I would definitely like to learn more about the Pangen Qigong. So that's good to hear. Thank you for sharing that. I have heard a decent amount of feedback of interest regarding Pangen Qigong. So I will be trying to etch out some time to put together more information about that, so I can add some more videos to that series, and then maybe put together a page for my website that kind of goes into more detail. So thanks for that feedback. Let's see. Our next comment comes from Tony Rodriguez on one of the Taiji 24 form videos. Let's see. Looks like Tony's been having some issues with YouTube, and it locked up a few times. Sorry to hear that, Tony. That is really frustrating when you're trying to watch a video on YouTube or just stream a video and things aren't working like they're supposed to. My wife and I ran into this problem the other day. We were trying to watch a show while we were eating dinner, and the internet just decided it wasn't going to allow it. And so I feel your pain there. I apologize for that experience. I hope you don't have it much more often in your Taiji learning experience. Looks like, let's see, switched to a different screen. Okay, still getting confused on the turnarounds with the east, south. Okay, so the directions that I'm giving. This is a problem at the senior center class, at the senior community center. There's another issue in that the instructor teaches a different version, the Paul Lam form, okay, or the Paul Lam version. She was taught by an instructor who had their own way of doing the 24 form. That's pretty common. I've seen this when I was learning the 108 Tai Chi form. Each instructor has developed their own style, which is fine. Yeah. But I still want to continue with what you're teaching. I believe it's pure. All right. Well, I'm sorry to hear about the frustration with the streaming, and then I'm just gonna go through this comment piece by piece and kind of comment back on some of the things. So I'm sorry to hear that the videos are still a little bit confusing, especially with the turning different angles with the east, south, etc. The reason that I use those directions, I think I've said this in videos in the past, is basically a lot of times when you look at old martial arts manuals, they use very often south as the starting direction, at least in Tai Chi. Like when you're looking at Taijiquan, they always start facing east, if I remember correctly. And really, it's not that you're facing actual south or actual east. It's just that when you're describing, okay, so I start the form facing south, and then I'm going to step to the east. Well, you know that if I'm facing south, my right is west. I'll bump the microphone there. To my left is east, like I say all the times in my videos. So it just kind of helps with the direction. Now, some people find that a little bit more confusing. So something that you can do to help with that is to take a piece of paper and put a big S on it and do that for all the cardinal directions. So the S is for south, an E for east, N for north, etc. And in the room where you're training, or in the area where you're training, you're just going to tape or pin those pieces of paper on 4 different walls so that they correspond to the direction that you start the form and where you're going from there. That way, when you start the form, you see a piece of paper on the wall that says S or south. And when you start moving to the east or to your left, you see a piece of paper that says east. And that way, in the video, when I say you step to the east, you step to the west, you turn to the north, you have something on the wall that cues you the direction that you're going, and you don't have to try to keep track of that at the same time as trying to keep track of what's being said in the video. So that's something that can be really helpful with that. And I hope that's a useful tip for you. So yeah, I know it can be confusing. Learning from a video is definitely a confusing way to learn. It's not the most ideal way, but I do hope that my videos are as least confusing as possible. So carry on. Glad to hear you're still pushing forward. It is something like you say with the class at the Tai Chi Center or the community center rather. 24 forms. There are a lot of variations, a lot of versions of that form around. Um, Dr. Paul Lam has a lot of great videos and instructional material around. So if it is easier for you to learn that version in person and supplement it with the materials that he has available, that's another option too. He has a lot of great information. So I hope that you're able to continue with training with other people in person. That's just like the experience of that is much better than training alone, and the chance to interact with an instructor and be like, I'm not getting this. What am I doing wrong? And have them actually look at what you're doing and give you real time feedback is always helpful. So I hope you're able to continue to engage with that group and learn in person. Um, and yes, it is very common if you go to 5 different Tai Chi schools, you will see 5 different versions of the same form. So there's always something that's a little bit different, and I've talked about reasons for that. So it can be a little frustrating when you're learning Tai Chi, when you're learning a new form, because you're just wanting to learn where in the world are my hands and feet supposed to go? What am I supposed to do next? And all the variations are just confusing. Just that basic, straightforward, where do things go, so you can get through the form. But my hope is as you get more used to this form and as you practice it more and it becomes a part of you, that you start to see the other variations as useful insights into the movements of the form, other perspectives on the same thing. So I know it's a little frustrating up front, but I really am glad to hear that you're continuing your learning, that you're pursuing Tai Chi further. And thank you so much for the comment. It's always good to hear that people are making progress in spite of some setbacks. So, alrighty. I'm going to check for some other comments here. There's see response status. There's a new way to check for replies to comments, which is a cool thing. So I'm going to see if there's been any replies to comments that I put on videos. Let's see. I already talked about that one. Okay. Don't think there's anything that I missed here really. So cool feature, but it didn't really help us today. I'll look a couple other places for comments. And if there's nothing, then I'm going to wrap this up. Yeah. So I did want to mention something about the Pengen Qigong. I came across a website a while back that was more geared. I don't remember if I mentioned this or not in the last video that I did talking about this, but it's more geared toward Xingyi and Bagua practitioners, and talks a bit more about the Pengen Qigong. And so I will see if I can find that uh, website or post again and share it as a part of the information that I make available, because I remember it being very informative and well put together, and it had good historical information about the Qigong set. So I'll see if I can find that again and get that out to you if you guys are interested in seeing that. So let me know. I think I'm going to call it a night. It is almost midnight, so I think I'm done with this today. Thank you all for tuning in. Thank you for your support. Thank you for your interest in Tai Chi and Qigong. Keep practicing. Stay safe and healthy out there, and I will see you all next time. Take care.